Welcome back to the BlackTrack, where I do commentary and review on movies with an all-black cast, or at least a black lead. While I was researching for CB4, everything I came across found a way to compare it to Fear of a Black Hat. It was unavoidable, so I figured, why not just go ahead and do a quick BlackTrack and point out all the weird ways in which the two films are forever tied to each other. In my last video, I already pointed out how technically Fear of a Black Hat released first, but only at a film festival. It didn't get a theatrical release until the following year, which was due to the fact that the studio that put it out got into financial trouble. Rusty Cundiff and company were lucky to even find a studio to finance it, because while trying to shop it to different places, they kept being told, "We don't want this, there's already another movie like this being shopped around." That movie being CB4, of course. Thankfully, Fear of a Black Hat found a home, because I think it's just different enough to stand on its own as another early 90s rapumentary film. As mentioned previously, Fear of a Black Hat was directed by Rusty Cundiff, who directed Tales from the Hood. He doesn't hide the fact at all that he was a big fan of and inspired by This Is Spinal Tap, and wanted badly to make a hip-hop version of it. It's because of that inspiration that Fear of a Black Hat takes on more of an improvisational tone, to fit into the more documentary-style filmmaking that Spinal Tap had. A lot of the lines in it are ad-libbed to give it more authenticity, just like in Spinal Tap. In fact, I'd say the movie borrows a little too much from Spinal Tap, but it turns out to be not so much a bad thing. Fear of a Black Hat is about three rappers named NWH and their rise to stardom and all the nonsense that goes along with that rise along the way. It stars Rusty Cundiff himself as sort of the leader of the group, named Ice Cold, and he's backed up by Tasty Taste, played by Larry B. Scott of the Nerds movie franchise, and Tone Deaf, played by Mark Christopher Lawrence. So is Fear of a Black Hat really that much like CB4? Or did people just see that they both had rap themes and ran wild with the comparison? Let's BlackTrack and find out. Right out of the gate, Fear of a Black Hat kind of begins how CB4 ends, with the group performing in front of a crowd as kind of a Public Enemy type group. Now, if you know going in that NWH stands for niggas with hats, then you know that there's no way that this is the vibe that the group is famous for. The reason for this wildly out of place performance with the distinct lack of interesting hats is because Fear of a Black Hat begins at the end of the movie and takes us back to the beginning. Hey, I'll take it. I may not normally like movies that start like this, but at least it didn't try to get all cute on us and start in the middle like CB4. Both movies show their love for hip hop early, with CB4 taking us through that museum and Fear of a Black Hat putting his love right there in the title, since it's a play on the 1990s Public Enemy album Fear of a Black Planet. As I said before, Fear of a Black Hat is a straight up documentary all the way through, and is presented as being a college project by an amateur filmmaker named Nina Blackburn, played by Cassie Lemons, who went on to direct East Bayou. Talk about life imitating art. You know what? All throughout the DVD commentary, Rusty Cundiff was calling her Casey Lemons instead of Cassie. I'm not even about to fight that battle, because he would know better than I would, since they go way back. All the way back to the movie School Days, which they both had short appearances in. I like how she's so adorably naive in this movie. She's way out of place, trying to make sense of these fools when she first meets them.
No, see, we don't necessarily like to say where we from.
I thought all rappers like to say where they're from, you know, bragging about their neighborhood as the toughest.
So what we're saying is, we don't front, you know, we perform in this motherfucker.
Bet.
They say it's a quiet one, so you have to watch out for.
And if you notice, I ain't said shit for a couple minutes now.
Tasty Taste is of course modeled after Eazy-E. Same hair, same amount of syllables in the name and everything. And Larry B. Scott let it be known that he went out of his way to be as aggressive and as abrasive as possible to try to get away from his Revenge of the Nerd days. Don't take that revelation too seriously. It was a different time, and him doing that was more about him showing range than being ashamed of the Lamar Latrell character. It worked, because he's largely unrecognizable in this film if all you know him from is the Nerd movies. Even I didn't even know it was him until I went to look and see who was this guy doing such a great job in this movie, and then I was like, oh, it's Lamar. He's one of those people you never know about their real name, only their most famous character. Ice Cold is a bit of a conglomeration of characters. He's a little LL Cool J, a little Run DMC, and of course, a spoof of how in fashion Ice names were in the early 90s. It's the equivalent of everybody either being named Lil something or Young something in today's rap. I'm saying, at what point do you run out of ways to spin it? Or think to yourself, damn, it's already 19 of them. Maybe I should be hot tea or something instead. Even in the Fear of a Black Hat universe, it's out of control.
See, ice cold, I'm the man, but we got ice tray, ice coffee, ice water, iceberg, ice cup, ice box. I mean, it gets real ridiculous when people trying to bite your style, you know what I'm saying?
Then there's Tone Deaf, the DJ, and a character that's a little harder to pin down who he's inspired by at first. He's supposed to be based off those conscious positive rappers like De La Soul, but there's also a little bit of those flowers and butterfly type artists like PM Dawn. He's a little underwritten and mostly just reacts to what the other two does rather than being memorable himself. One of the biggest differences between NWH and CB4 is that NWH technically aren't fake. Well, they are fake, but not in the way you think, and definitely not like Albert and crew. Their fakeness comes in the form of the fact that they'll do literally anything to get put on. Like when Ice Cold does a My Adidas ripoff called My Peanuts, which everybody keeps calling My Penis because that's clearly the inference, but Ice Cold plays it dumb and snaps at anybody who says it's anything but My Peanuts. That's one of my favorite things about NWH, the fact that they do a bunch of dumb stuff but never ever own up to it, no matter what happens. Like the running joke that their managers keep dying mysteriously, which is also taken from the joke in Spinal Tap where the drummers keep dying. It's implied that NWH killed at least one of them, but they can't keep the story straight.
If I remember correctly, he ended up murdered.
But we wasn't in town when that shit happened.
No. We was there, man.
We was in Cleveland like a mug.
No. We went up to
Oh, money, we was in Toronto.
Yo, we were trying to set the shit
G,
straight.
This dynamic persists throughout the entire movie, and they never agree on or own up to anything, and it's hilarious. Both this and CB4 seem to exist in a universe where real life artists also exist alongside the movie's parodies, much more so in Fear of a Black Hat than CB4, since CB4 is primarily about the main group and only make mention of the real life groups in passing. Outside of their early celebrity interviews, the only parody we really see much of is Wacky D. On the flip side, Fear of a Black Hat does the reverse and goes all out creatively, relying more on knockoffs of real acts and only mentioning their real life counterparts briefly. It's real inconsistent though, because at one point, their record executive says that he wants them to start dancing like Hammer, but then later, we meet MC Slammer, played by Lamont Johnson from Class Act. Ain't no way they both exist in this universe, especially when Slammer is headlining shows. Then don't let this movie mess around and exist in the same universe as CB4. Hammer, Slammer, and Wacky D is a hell of a dance-off that I didn't know I wanted until just now. Be on the lookout for Darren Scott, who not only directed Caught Up, but also House Party, Tonight's the Night. But he also produced this film, Menace to Society, and Tales from the Hood. So he's redeemed in my eyes. Fear of a Black Hat also has an F around and find out concert arrest scene, but it seems more reminiscent of the 2 Live Crew incident when they were arrested in Florida for obscenity. I say that because NWH lyrics are more sexual in nature. They're told if they perform the song Grab Your SHIT, which also includes the lyrics Grab Your DICK, that they will be arrested. So they changed it up to say grab your stuff instead. And unlike CB4, they at least try to comply with the orders until
Where you going, boy? You grab your ass.
I just can't get over how alike these two movies are. The song even kind of sounds like Sweat From My Balls. Now, having a record executive who wants you to start dancing like Hammer is one thing, but having you actually go through with it is grounds for dismissal among other things. But it's nice to see that NWH is at least flexible and gave it an honest try. I just think this is another one of those scenes that Larry Scott insisted on to try to shake his old image, because why else would they pair him up in this scene with a man who could assault him from the other room if he really wanted to? I forgot to mention why they're even called Negroes with hats. See, because when we were slaves, you see, we didn't have hats, so let me just let Ice Cold explain it to you.
We got a whole hat philosophy. See, back in the days when there was slaves and stuff, they would work in the hot sun all day, you know, with the sun beating down on them, hatless. And so by the time they got back to the plantation, from being in all the heat, they was too tired to rebel against their masters, right? Yo, we got some hats now, motherfuckers.
The crew can't confirm or deny what happened to the last record executive, but they end up with a new one called Jeffrey Lennox, played by Barry Henry, and he's no different really than Trustus Jones, other than the fact that he's paranoid as hell and is the only other person who understands tone deaf. I think the movie drops the ball a little on tone deaf. It's not until this part that we even learn that he's a little weird. You know how it is when people can seem normal until they open their mouth? It's Jeffrey who shoots NWH to the top of the charts though, making them almost headliners, right under Slammer of course, and earning the hatred of the Jam Boys, a rival group who I read is supposed to be based off the Fat Boys, but I'll be honest, I didn't really see the correlation, and Rusty Cundiff failed to mention the inspiration. One of the members are played by Faison Love, and he did this right after Bebe's Kids, and right before The Meteor Man, so his career was just getting started. And another member is played by that backstabbing Deezer D. I'm kidding of course, if anything, his agent was a genius for getting him in not one, but 2 films doing the exact same thing, basically playing the exact same character, one without even any dialogue. Towards the middle, Fear of a Black Hat kind of loses me a little bit because it takes the focus off the group as a whole and gives them their own individual spotlight. Crazy enough, I think this would have been better in CB4 because their individual stories were actually interesting. Otis with all them sisters, Euripides working at the hotline, you could have made a whole movie just on that. But in Fear of a Black Hat, they end up trying to force interesting things on the characters. When the draw was with them as a group, not separate, it's not completely terrible. I think it just drags. We learn that Tasty Taste moved to an upscale neighborhood, and despite him owning an arsenal of weapons that he shows off to Nina, and the fact that he walks around with a grenade on his neck, the joke is that he goes out of his way to be nice to his white neighbors.
Here you go, my European brother.
Billy, get over here.
And all this, despite the fact that they have a song called Kill Whitey, but they aren't talking about killing all white people. No. They were talking about killing a very specific white person, Whitey DeLuca, their former manager. But how would these people know that? There's actually some clever commentary going on there, because in the movie, it's mentioned that if you actually listen to the lyrics, it explains who they're talking about killing. But of course, the people who are most offended by the song aren't gonna do that. Next, Nina spends time with Tone Deaf, and the highlight of this is just the fact that she learns that not only can he DJ with his butt cheeks, but he can also scratch with his, we'll just say, stuff. Don't want to be obscene? Let's see Stabmaster Arson try that. Then finally, she spends time with Ice Cold, who's surprisingly the least interesting of the 3, despite being the funniest. The only good part about this scene is them not getting pulled over by cops, but instead security guards, which prompts the group to make the song F the Security Guards, because to them, they are worse than the police. Only in Fear of a Black Hat would hardcore rappers be allowed to talk to children. The idea was to teach the kids that the gangster life isn't fun, but come on, these ignorant ass dudes aren't the right people for this, especially since they just made a video showing that it is very much fun as hell. They end up sharing a career day with the Jam Boys, but this ends up backfiring on the Jam Boys because as it turns out, they're actually the fake gangsters of the 2 groups, and NWH has the receipts to prove it. It would have been great if this movie came out second, because that would have been a hell of a shot at CB4. When things are going good, you know it can't be good forever, and I would have liked to see Fear of a Black Hat figure out a more clever way to break up the group. But instead, it leans on the old Yoko Ono cliche, where a woman is the downfall of the group. The woman in question is Cheryl, a groupie who randomly starts dating Tasty Taste, despite Ice Cool trying to warn him about her reputation. Cheryl is played by Rose Jackson of Dead Presidents fame, and yeah, she's cute and all, but I've always been more of an En Bouche Wright kind of guy. If we're talking Dead Presidents, if it was her, I would have said to hell with the group too. I can fix her. She tries to control everything about Tasty, and eventually, Ice Cold is proven to be right about her, even though he had to do his own research. That's why you should always do your own research. Don't let somebody else tell you that she's the freak. Find out for yourself, and don't forget your references. Not only does the group break up, but they also lose another manager when their latest one gets so nervous about dying that he buys a gun and ends up accidentally shooting himself with it. This comes after the Jam Boys accidentally shoot the previous one. The breakup of the group leads to the absolute funniest part of the movie. So in CB4, when the group broke up, the movie played around with the idea of them doing different ventures as solo acts, but it doesn't really go all in on the idea. Oh, but Fear of a Black Hat spared no expense in that department. Each member basically gets an entire solo song, poking fun at all the top genres of the time, and it's amazing. Ice Cold is first, with another CNC Music Factory ripoff, not too different from Wacky D is in the House, except he wants everybody to pet the PUSSY, which is an acronym that you'll have to watch the movie to hear him explain. The best part is the fact that he uses an Asian woman to sing the hook, once again poking fun at the fact that Martha Wash got no credit. There's even a scene later where a Martha Wash lookalike confronts her over it. Tone Deaf fully embraces his flowers and butterflies persona and channels his inner PM Dawn in a song called I'm Just a Human, a parody of a supposed interview where PM Dawn frontman Prince B said that he's not black. It's perfectly set to a knockoff of PM Dawn's Set Adrift on Memory Bliss.
You are just like me.
I'm just a human.
I am just like you.
I'm just a human.
We all stand or sit and repeat.
I'm just a human being.
And my favorite is Tasty Taste's diss towards Ice Cold called Granny Said Kick Your Ass, which is a parody of Mama Said Knock You Out by LL Cool J. You know he's serious about it because he cut his Jerry curl and everything. I can't help but laugh at the fact that the video is so literal.
I'm gonna kick your black ass teeth, gonna kick your black ass, I'm gonna kick your black ass, Granny says kick your black ass.
Just the fact that they put so much budget and effort into the parody songs makes me wish it was an entire album filled with them that I could just buy. It's not a funeral that brings them back together, but it almost was, because some people didn't too much appreciate Tone Deaf proclaiming that he's not black and roughed him up while he was out in them streets. I guess this makes them realize that they were safer when they were a unit, and I guess that's what brings us back to the beginning of the film when they decide to rebrand themselves as positive rappers. Wait a minute though. How did Tone Deaf get back on his feet so fast? You get your ass kicked like that, I doubt you're gonna be DJing with it anytime soon. Let's get to the grade. So which one is better, Fear of a Black Hat or CB4? Honestly, it's a tough decision because both of them are extremely funny, but it's two completely different types of comedy. CB4 is more in-your-face comedy that doesn't really require you to think on the jokes, whereas Fear of a Black Hat has comedy that may go over your head the first time, but that you'll cry laughing about either way later or during a repeated viewing. Both movies do a fantastic job being parodies of early 90s rap culture, and even though Fear of a Black Hat beats CB4 in the amount of music, both have catchy songs that stand the test of time. The only thing that CB4 really beats Fear of a Black Hat in is production value, since, well, it had a bigger budget. But you also have to keep in mind that Fear of a Black Hat looks the way it looks on purpose, because it's supposed to be an actual documentary, not a movie. If I'm forced to make a choice, I have to give the very, very slight edge to CB4. Don't get me wrong, I love both films, but even despite its weird ending and pacing, I think CB4 tells a more grounded story. Fear of a Black Hat technically doesn't even have a story, due to the documentary style, and because most of it is improvisational, some of the details tend to get lost in the shuffle and makes it a little hard to follow at points. Like I said, neither one of them are bad, and who would have ever guessed that two twin movies like this would not only come out at the same time, but also be amazing love letters to hip-hop. My grade for Fear of a Black Hat is a B. If you've only ever seen CB4, you owe it to yourself to watch its little-known rival. And what about you? Do you like Fear of a Black Hat better, or do you prefer CB4? Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about my channel. And until next BlackTrack, I'll holla at you.